Hello, I'm Mauro Guillen. I'm a professor at the Wharton School, and today I'm having a conversation with Joaquin Duato, who is the vice chairman of the executive committee at Johnson & Johnson, the largest pharmaceutical and healthcare equipment company in the world. He manages a portfolio of $55 billion and 90,000 employees. Joaquin, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Mauro. Thank you, Professor Guillen. Thank you for inviting me today. And first, I would like to take a moment to recognize each of you listening today for continuing to make a commitment to your studies during these challenging times. I know firsthand that it's difficult to stay focused on your education when you are seeing the impact that the COVID pandemic is having in our communities and around the world. So for me personally, as I'm sure for you, Mauro, too, it has been hard to watch the evolving situation in our home country of Spain. Each day I worry about my parents and my extended family and my friends in Spain there. But nevertheless, reflecting on the challenges that this crisis has brought to all of us, I also have found what you guys call in the States silver linings, so positive aspects that I can take with me. I have been able to spend more time with my family. All of my kids are at home, and I'm enjoying every extra minute with them. And professionally, I also have got energized by the extraordinary collaboration that I see internally at Johnson & Johnson and externally to try to address this pandemic. It's remarkable. Now, because this is a management class, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the need that companies and organizations have to have very solid crisis management plans in place, or what we call business continuity plans. The last time you want to be thinking in a crisis is creating a new playbook to really deal with the situation. You need to be prepared for that, and you need to have strong BCP plans in place. Here at Johnson & Johnson, as we do life-saving medicines and medical devices and essential consumer products, for us, it's vital to be able to ensure that we have strong continuity plans so we can continue to supply our products to the patients and consumers we serve. That's why business continuity has always been very central to our activities. Since the coronavirus first emerged, and that started early January when we started to see that in China, I have led a global cross-functional team managing the integrated Johnson & Johnson response to this unprecedented outbreak. We have a comprehensive management team in place that has expanded its resources and its scope as the situation was evolving from China to the rest of the world. And our plan has four main parts. Our first part and our number one priority is that we are focused on protecting the health and well-being of our employees. So we make sure that we make the resources available to them to stay healthy and to be able to navigate these unique circumstances. And we pay particular attention to those that we call critical employees, which are people working on the manufacturing sites or people working, taking care of our critical technology infrastructure, of our R&D labs that still need to come to work in the middle of this pandemic. Second thing, we safeguard our business continuity, particularly in our supply chain, to be able to navigate these circumstances and still being able to produce and distribute our products that many patients and consumers around the world depend. So that's a very key aspect for us too, particularly when you are thinking about a global supply chain as we have at Johnson & Johnson. The third thing, being a healthcare company, is to focus on how are we going to collaborate in the solution, either via treatments or vaccines. So our efforts have been focused on developing and producing a vaccine for the coronavirus, but also screening our existing treatments to see if some of them, alone or in combination, may have activity versus the coronavirus. And finally, we are trying to support through product donations, financial donations, and equipment, the communities in which we live and work. So those are the four pillars of our crisis management plan. Fortunately, a company like Johnson & Johnson, we say, was built for times like this. We are an extraordinarily solid company with more than 135 years of history, 55 years of consecutive dividend increases, 36 years of earnings increases. So when you think about resiliency, and everybody is thinking about resiliency, and it's a buzzword today, if you think about the epitome of a resilient company, that is Johnson & Johnson. We are the only, together with another company, one of the two companies in the world that has a AAA financial rating. In fact, we are navigating these complexities that COVID-19 are bringing to us based on the same strengths that we have always had to set us apart. The first part is that we are a science-based company, and facts and science are important to navigate these circumstances. The second one, the scale and stability of our business. We have a diversified business model, consumer, medical device, and pharmaceuticals, which has a global scale, and it enables us to navigate different business cycles and circumstances. And finally, the courage of our convictions. We are a principle-based company. That's part of who we are. Our credo made the 75th year anniversary in 2018. We were socially responsible before it was fashionable to be socially responsible, and the convictions of putting the patients and consumers first, the employees, the communities, and finally the shareholders are very deep, run very deep in our organization. So given that we are a healthcare company, we also felt that we had the responsibility and the ability to collaborate in addressing the crisis, and hence we have been working very hard since then in order to come up with a solution in the form of a vaccine or of a treatment. We believe that in these circumstances, words speak, but the important thing are your actions. So we wanted to communicate to the world that we are going to be working towards the solution, and hence we announced our plans for the vaccine last week that I'm sure I can comment after this.
Yes, thank you so much, Joaquin. I should clarify that he's joining us from New Jersey today, and today is April 4th. So, Joaquin, tell us about the vaccine and the other treatment options, because everyone around the world is right now asking how quickly is a vaccine going to be available so that we can go back to some kind of normal life.
So, as you said, look, there's the biopharmaceutical industry overall has really come together to try to look for a solution for this situation. On one hand, you have companies looking at treatments. Many of these treatments, the majority of them are medicines that existed already and are being repurposed to treat COVID-19. There are many trials ongoing, and I am positive and I'm certain that by the summer we'll know better if there are existing medicines that can treat COVID-19. And also there's some new medicines that may be treated here that we may have more results later. But I'm optimistic that during the summer, once some of the trials that are ongoing with existing medicines that are being repurposed for COVID-19, we may see some promising data. At the same time, what we need to definitively address this problem is to have a vaccine. And that's an area where we have been working for a long time. We have been making, billions of dollars in investments in creating a vaccine platform to address different pandemic threats. We put in motion our vaccine platform with Ebola and also with Zika, and the same type of construct, both from a development perspective and from a manufacturing perspective, that we have been using for Ebola and for Zika, now we are deploying into COVID-19. So it's not that we started now to look for a vaccine. We've been working for a decade in developing a vaccine technology that can be rapidly deployed in case of a pandemic. And we started very early in January this year to look for a specific vaccine for COVID-19 once the sequence of the virus was made known by the Chinese scientists. In doing that, we have had tremendous collaboration with many other organizations like the World Health Organization, the federal government here in the US, different agencies in Europe, And it's been one of these situations where everybody comes together with a single goal in mind to try to work as quickly as possible to ensure a vaccine that is safe and effective. In particular, some of you may have heard that we made an announcement last week of a collaboration with BARDA, which is the US government agency responsible to help address threats, including pandemics like influenza, or in this case, COVID-19, and emerging diseases. So together with BARDA, we have committed $1 billion for our investigational COVID vaccine program. As part of this announcement, what we have told is that we have selected already a COVID-19 vaccine candidate from different constructs that we have tested in animals, and we have been working on them since January. And what we are doing is that at the same time that we are working in selecting the first vaccine candidate to bring into the clinic, we have rapidly scaled our manufacturing capability with the goal of being able to provide 1 billion doses of the vaccine by 2021 once we have it. So it's not only important to be able to develop it, but also it's very important to be able to produce it in large quantities to have this global access. So perhaps the key question for you is the timeline about it. When are we going to be able to have the vaccine? When the vaccine will be deployable? We expect to start human clinical studies with the lead vaccine candidate at the latest by September. And we anticipate that the first batches of the vaccine could be available for emergency use authorization in early 2021. So again, early 2021 would be when we will have a vaccine deployable, initially most likely in first-line healthcare workers and in the population at risk. That is a substantially accelerated time frame in comparison to a typical vaccine development. A typical vaccine development ranges between 5 to 8 years, so it shows the extraordinary collaboration that we are having with the government agencies and the intensity of our scientists in developing things as quickly as possible. We, as part of this announcement, what we have also said is that once we have the vaccine, we are going to be selling the vaccine on a non-profit basis. In other words, we plan not to make any profit out of it, and it would be our contribution in order to be able to solve this important vaccine program. So that's in essence what we are doing with the vaccine. We're building on an existing platform. We plan to start first in human studies in September. We may have enough data to get emergency authorization use by the first quarter of next year. And at that point, we already will have enough quantities of the vaccine available because we're starting to produce at risk now in order to deploy it. And we plan to do it on a non-profit basis.
Thank you, Joaquin. This is really informative. One quick follow-up question. How many employees, if you can share that number with us, are currently directly working on all of the various activities for vaccine development?
We may have about, between the people that are working in R&D and the people that are working mainly in supply chain, we may have, about 1,000 people working in that effort. This is a combined effort, R&D, pharmaceutical development, and supply chain, because as I said before, our scientists are working on that. Then we have to do the development, but the real critical thing is to be able to manufacture at scale.
Okay, thank you so much. And one last quick question for you. We all read in the press that there are shortages of certain types of medical equipment at hospitals, not only in the United States, but also around the world. What is Johnson & Johnson doing to try to address that problem?
Yeah, look, this situation about PPE or protective personal equipment is really a difficult one, and it affects primarily to frontline healthcare workers that are at risk working with patients without enough equipment. I think if you look at our home country in Spain, I think there are about 10,000 healthcare workers, out of 120,000 which are infected. 10,000 healthcare workers are infected, and that's a demonstration of the type of work they are doing. What we are doing, we don't produce personal protective equipment. So unfortunately, we cannot contribute there other than by donations, financial donations, or donations of equipment that we can procure ourselves to donate to the appropriate organizations. So what we have done, and we started this year, we have created a fund of $250 million to support healthcare workers that will be deployed over a period of 10 years. And with the occasion of COVID-19, we have increased this commitment now with another $50 million. So we are trying to support them financially in order to be able to address this problem. But overall, I believe that what this points to is that the world has to be better prepared for pandemics, and we all have to work in order to create the required stockpiles to address a potential pandemic in the future. So I think that things in the future will be different when it comes to pandemic preparation, and one of the areas that we'll have to pay more attention to will be not only to deploy the right treatments of vaccines in a record period of time, but also have enough reserves to be able to address the situations of the medications and personal protective equipment that are really critical. This is going to be, when we discuss this internally, this is not going to be a restart when we come back, but many things are going to be reset. And one of the things that is going to be reset is how we prepare for the next pandemic and how we organize our continuity plans, our supply chain globally, so they are more resilient. And that's something that a company like Johnson & Johnson, as we are there for the long term, are really willing to participate.
So thank you so much, Joaquin. I would like to, of course, thank you for everything that you and your company are doing to help us all cope with this crisis. And, of course, we're all expecting Johnson & Johnson to be successful at vaccine development, trials, and eventually mass-scale production. So this was Joaquin Duato, Vice Chairman of the Executive Committee worldwide for Johnson & Johnson. He manages $55 billion and 90,000 employees. Thank you so much for joining us today, April 4th, 2020.